This is Ryder Keeping It Real. We're reading from the Good News Bible with the Apocrypha, First Maccabees Chapter 3. The early victories of Judas. Judas Maccabeus took the place of his father, Matthias. All his brothers and all the loyal followers of his father gave him their support, and they were happy to carry on Israel's war. Judas brought great glory to his people. In his armor, he was like a giant. He took his weapons and went to war. With his own sword, he defended his camp. He was like a ferocious lion, roaring as it attacks. Judas hunted down those who broke the law and set fire to all who oppressed his people. In fear of him, lawless men huddled together in terror, not knowing which way to turn. He advanced the cause of freedom by which he did. He advanced the cause of freedom by what he did. He made life miserable for many kings, but brought joy to the people of Israel. We will praise him forever for what he did. He went through the towns of Judea and destroyed all the godless men. He relieved Israel of its terrible suffering. His fame spread to the ends of the earth as he gathered together those who were threatened with death. You see, this kind of tells you why they wanted this book out of the Bible. This is the power, the strength of an Israelite man and what he was able to do to bring joy to Israel, to take care of business, basically. It's a picture from 3:19. Let's get there. So verse 10. Then Apollonius assembled a Gentile army, including a large force from Samaria, to attack the people of Israel. When Judas learned of this, he marched out to battle to defeat the army and kill Apollonius. Many Gentiles lost their lives, the rest fled. When the spoils of the war were collected, Judas took the sword of Apollonius and used it in battle until the day he died. Sarion, the general of the Syrian forces, learned that Judas had gathered together an army consisting of a band of loyal men who were ready to fight under his command. Sarion said to himself, I will make a reputation for myself throughout the empire by defeating Judas and his men, with no respect for the king's command, who have no respect for the king's command. Then he began a new campaign against Judas and was joined by a strong force of godless men who were eager to help him take vengeance on Israel. When he approached the pass at Beth Horon, Judas went out to meet him, and with a small group of men, when Judas' men saw the army coming against them, they said, How can our little group of men fight an army as big as that? Besides, we have not eaten all day and we are tired. Oh, this is verse 19. It is the Lord's power that determines the outcome. That's Judas and his men, and that's who they're going to fight. Okay. Got it. It is not difficult, Judas answered. For a small group to overpower a large one, it makes no difference to the Lord whether we are rescued by many people or by just a few. Victory in battle does not depend on who has the largest army. It is the Lord's power that determines the outcome. That's right. Our enemies are coming against us with a great violence, intending to plunder our possessions and kill our wives and children. But we are fighting for our lives and for our religion. Wait. Oh, wait. So I do have this Apocrypha right here. It's a little red book. You can get this on Amazon. I want to see what this says there. First Maccabees 3, what? Does that say religion in this? 3:21. One. First Maccabees 3:21. First Maccabees 3:21 says Yeah, I didn't think it said religion. But we will fight for our lives and our laws, right? So this religion's piece, I mean, this is an easy reading book, but sometimes you have to really go back to original sources because that's like Constantine Christianity, religion. No, it was laws. So, but we are fighting for our lives and our laws. When we when we attack, the Lord will crush our enemies. So we don't have to be afraid of them. I mean, yeah, loving this. As soon as Judas had finished speaking, he and his men made a sudden attack against Saron and his army and crushed them. They pursued them down the pass of Beth Horon to the plain and killed about 800 men. Wow. I mean, that's kind of like, reminds me of David and Goliath, of Samson, where you had these men and all that, they had the power of the Most High behind them. Oh, those who escaped fled to Philistia. After that, Gentiles everywhere began to be afraid of Judas and his brothers. His fame reached the ears of King Antiochus, and people in every nation talked about Judas and his victories. Except, did we know about him as our ancestor and what was happening? No, because they took this out of the Bible, so you wouldn't know. Sorry. I mean, at one point I thought I was just gonna read the scripture and not have any commentary, but that's not gonna happen. I mean, and it's just, what I think, what the Spirit is saying to me, to how I feel. You don't have to agree with me. It's okay. If anybody's listening, I'm really reading this kind of because it's just, I'm enjoying it actually. The king appoints Lysias as governor. When Antiochus heard what happened, he was furious. He ordered all the armies of his empire to assemble in one huge force, like, we're going to get you back. From his treasury, he paid a full year's wages to his soldiers and ordered them to be prepared for the emergency. But then he found that the funds in his treasury were exhausted. Oh, he was out of money. Woo! That sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Like, how the U.S. is pretty much, in so much debt. Income from taxes had decreased because of the disorder and the troubles he had brought on the world by doing away with the laws which had been in force from the earliest time. Antiochus had always given presents more lavishly than earlier kings, but now he was worried that he might not be able to continue this, or even to meet expenses. This had happened once or twice before. He was very disturbed, but finally he decided to go to Persia, collect the taxes from the provinces there, and bring together a large sum of ready cash. And that ain't going to help them. He appointed Lysias, an important man who had been granted the title relative of the king. As governor to take care of the king's affairs in the whole territory between Euphrates River and the Egyptian border. The king also made Lysias the guardian of his son Antiochus V upon his own return. He put Lysias in charge of all the elephants and of half of his army, and then gave him detailed instructions. What's going to happen here? Detailed instructions about what he wanted done. And in particular, what he wanted done with the inhabitants of Judea and Jerusalem. Lysias was ordered to send an army against the Jews, especially the Jews in Jerusalem, to break their power and destroy them. I don't think that's going to work, but we're going to see. So that no trace of them would remain. like wipe them out. He was ordered to take their land and give it to foreigners. I mean, listen, nothing is new under the sun. Nothing is new under the sun. Who would settle the whole area. I mean, that has happened countless number of times. It happened in the U.S. It happened all over. Countless number of times. Taking the other half of his army, the king set out from Antioch, his capital city, in the year 147. He crossed the Euphrates River, marched through Mesopotamia. Okay. The victories of Judas. What is this? Victories of Judas. Lysias chose Nicanor, Gorgias, and Ptolemy, son of Dormenes, as army commanders. All three were able men who bore the title Friend of the King. So Friend of the King is a title. Friend of the King. He put them in charge of 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry and ordered them to invade the land of Judea. Is that Judea? Judea, and destroy it as the king had commanded. Like, hey, I'm going to command it. You're going to do it. It's going to happen. I'm not thinking it's going to happen. These commanders set out with their entire force, and when they came to the plains near Emas, they made camp. A force from Idumea and Philista joined them. And I really suggest you guys, if you're listening to this, just look these words up. Look these places up, these words, these places, for yourself. The merchants of the region heard about the strength of the army, and they came to the camp with chains. Wait a minute. The merchants of the region heard about the strength of the army, and they came to the camp with chains and a large amount of money, hoping to buy some Jewish slaves. Oh, wow. Judas and his brothers saw their situation was getting more and more difficult, with foreign armies camped within their own borders. They also learned that the king had commanded that complete destruction of the people. So they determined to rebuild their ruined nation and fight for their country and the temple. Then the whole community came together to prepare for war and to pray for God's mercy. God of mercy. Jerusalem was empty as a wilderness. No citizens left or entered the city. The holy temple was profaned by foreigners, and Gentiles camped in the city's fort. So joy departed from the people of Israel, and the sound of music was heard no more. Then Judas and his men assembled and marched to Mizpah, opposite Jerusalem, because the people of Israel had previously had a place of worship there. In deep mourning, they fasted all day, put on sackcloth, threw ashes on their heads, and tore their clothes. The Gentiles would have consulted their idols in such a situation, but the Israelites unrolled the book of the law and searched for God's guidance. This is the book of the law. This is giving us God's guidance. They brought the priest's robes and offering of the first grain. They brought the priest's robes and offerings of the first grain and the tithes, and then they brought in some Nazarites who had completed their vows. The whole community prayed, Lord, what shall we do with these things? Where shall we take them now that our holy temple has been trampled and profaned by the Gentiles, and your priests mourn in disgrace? The Gentiles have come to attack and destroy us. You know what they plan to do. If you don't help us, how can we stand up against them? Then they blew trumpets and shouted loudly. They prayed. After that, Judas divided his men into groups of 10, 50, and 100, and 1,000, placing officers in charge of each group. Then, in obedience to the law, he sent home everyone who had recently been married, built a house, or planted a vineyard, as well as anyone who was afraid. Finally, the army marched out and took up positions south of Emas, where Judas said to them, Prepare yourselves for battle and be courageous. Be ready early tomorrow morning to fight these Gentiles who have joined forces to attack us and destroy us and our temple. It is better for us to die fighting than to stand idly by and watch the destruction of our nation and our temple. But the Lord will do what he pleases. That was chapter 3. Almost like it's like a Netflix movie. I can see Yes. So that was chapter 3 of First Maccabees. We're signing off until the next chapter.